Welcome in. It's the Mile. Oh, sorry about that. Welcome in. It's the Mile High Baseball Podcast. I'm Jake Shapiro, coming to you after a week of baseball here in Colorado. It was a fun day yesterday. My first time at the ballpark this year. Always love to get out to the ballpark. And also hanging around Lodo was my really good friend and baseball aficionado, DMac from The Drive. Y'all know him, obviously, because this is the fan in Denver sports. DMac, yesterday, one of my favorite days of the year.
Yeah.
Just tell me about the vibe, because you were outside. I was inside working. You were outside kind of having a little bit more fun, I think, than me.
Yeah, I was there early and then had to come back to the studio. But, listen, the opening day is a celebration of Denver, a celebration of our city, and of a genius idea to take old, burned out warehouses and turn them into a vibrant part of our wonderful town. And that centers around baseball. So for whatever criticisms can fairly be made of what's on the field, opening day to me is more of a celebration of the creation of the Rockies and Major League Baseball in Denver, period. Little known fact, the original owner of the Denver Broncos, his whole goal was to get Major League Baseball to Denver.
Yeah.
That's why he actually bought the Broncos, because he wanted to get a stadium to bring in Major League Baseball. It didn't work out. He only owned the Broncos for 1 year, and then the rest is history there. But there's a long-standing tradition of baseball here in this city, even before the Rockies. So I think it's thrilling to be part of what was my unreal 23rd opening day in Denver, Colorado. How lucky is that, huh?
So 31st opening day for the Colorado Rockies.
Yeah.
This is my 8th season now covering the Colorado Rockies, which
Yeah.
is hilarious because look at me. I mean,
Yeah.
it's not, that doesn't equate.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was really fun. And there's about 3 of these in the spring that are like celebratory Denver holidays.
Yeah.
It's Kentucky Derby Day, it's St. Patrick's Day, and it's opening day. And to me, opening day is as much a celebration of the fact that we are a big city and we have this beautiful ballpark as much as it is what's going on the field. I have not seen that much Rockies gear said besides postseason play in a long time. Like it's just postseason play and opening day. Like I'm surprised at the amount of people that actually owned Colorado Rockies gear, because the entire area of Lodo was purple. I was like, wow, I feel like I should be wearing my Troy Tulowitzki jersey right now. But
Spelled correctly or incorrectly?
Oh, it's spelled correctly.
Okay.
I got that in high school. I had the mullet in high school because I loved Tulo so much.
Tulo was your guy, huh?
Oh, my God.
Okay.
The old PR director of the Rockies, Warren Miller, crushed me for this. So we were doing a panel of a bunch of Rockies bloggers and podcasters one time. It was like 3 days after the Tulo trade. It just so happened to be. It was like a post-trade deadline panel, and none of us expected Tulo to be traded that time because there had been smoke for forever.
Yeah.
And the panel was a bunch of guys going, this team, this franchise,
Yeah.
we're all boom, boom,
Frustrated.
boom.
Yes.
And I was the most upset one possible because Tulo was
Tulo's
my
your
favorite
guy.
player growing up. And for the entire time Warren worked with the Rockies, he'd be like, you doing okay? Is the Tulo thing still biting you? And I'm like, we got Nolan now, but now we don't. But so I was feeling good later. So
Well, Tulo was he was our guy too in our family, and he was my older son's favorite player, and my younger son has always wanted to wear number 2. Now you play college ball, it gets to be something weird with the numbers, but the choice is always in our family were Tulowitzki and Carlos Gonzalez. So we were a number 5 and a number 2 family for years and years and years and years. So I feel it, and it's great having some sort of heritage with the Rockies where you do feel tied into the team. So when you get to opening day, it always just feels hope springs eternal, as the cliche goes. And yesterday was a great day for the Rockies. It was.
yeah, I was surprised at how well they pitched. Kyle's been really good so far through 2 starts this season.
How much of an advantage do you think it was that he got his competitive juices going with the World Baseball Classic?
For him, I think it mattered. There's certain guys where it hurts, but for Kyle, he's such like a big game and big moment pitcher. Like that's the thing that stinks with where the Rockies are is Kyle in 2017 and 2018 built them to so many important games, succeeded in so many important games. This was his 3rd home opener. I think he's been really good in all 3.
Yeah.
He's great when the pressure's on. So I think for him to mentally all offseason to be like, when I start throwing, it's going to be 100% from the get-go.
Yeah.
So Kyle's like in mid-season form right now.
Do you think it worked the opposite with Bard?
Yeah, I think the particularly hitting Altuve that got to him.
Okay.
I don't have any inside stuff on this,
Okay.
but just based off of dealing with anxiety myself and other
Okay.
people that have had anxiety, I think hurting a person would really bother me and make me question my own command.
How's he doing? We expecting him back soon? Or
Well, I know he was with the Rockies in San Diego.
Okay.
But he wasn't around yesterday, best I could tell. Man, it's hard to figure out what was going on yesterday.
Well, it set up quite a finish with Pierce Johnson. I didn't see that coming by. I didn't know that was the alternative. I didn't really know much about his story, but wow. Listen, I'm hoping the best for Bard for sure. But that was an awesome story. And what a moment for him and his family, who are, I assume, he still has family in Arvada.
Yeah, and the funny thing about Pierce is he went to Faith Christian High School. Faith Christian's a smaller high school in terms of it's a great baseball program, but it's not a huge high school.
Is that 3A? 3A, okay.
So
there is a surprising amount of really good high school players playing at that 3A level.
Isn't Eaton 3A or 4A?
Maybe there's a kid, Osman, who went to ASU who played 3A. There's just been some really good players for whatever reason. Maybe because high school means less and less compared to club ball, for example, and just like where you go, right, for high school and whatever, you get your starts and your pitches, and then you're playing for, Slammers or whoever.
Well, and that's what I was going to say about Pierce is I knew him a little bit in high school because in high school, all the Faith Christian guys in the summer playing Legion ball would play for Boulder.
Okay,
so
there you go.
David Bodie was my starting shortstop in high school for our Legion team, which, by the way,
that's awesome.
And as you know, DMac, you play 90 games of Legion ball. You play 20 at high school, so you get a lot closer with your Legion guys, and you're with them all summer, and there's nothing else going on. So you're out, at the ballpark all day with them, playing double headers, sometimes triple headers.
Yeah.
So I played in Legion ball with Bodie, and we played against Pierce. I didn't know who he was at the time, but I knew he was David's friend from high school.
That's right.
So I played him, and then we played, Grandview with Greg Bird and who was their other? They had a really good Gossman.
Oh,
and
okay.
Then, And then I played Kyle Freeland, obviously. So I've played against all these guys in high school.
So your age and where you were at has timed up well with all these guys who are now Major League Baseball players.
Yeah,
that's crazy.
It's insane, and it's like so far been like the golden crop of high school players out of college. Yeah, it's been awesome.
Absolutely. There's another good crew that's about to come through. They need another couple years, but I'm forgetting the kid from Dakota Ridge. Gosh darn it, got drafted by the Rockies. Then he was traded to the Reds, came back to the Rockies. Gosh darn it, I'm forgetting his name.
Are you but
it's all right. But there's him. There's
the Marco Gonzalez.
Jack Moss, who's at Texas A&M. He was at ASU. I mean, you'll hear probably another 3 years, another group. But you were with a great group. You can't argue with that. That was an unbelievably productive group.
Yeah, and it's funny because your son is a legitimately good baseball player. I had a chance to maybe go play JUCO ball, and I didn't really care. It wasn't like I knew it wasn't a pathway forward. Like I looked at myself in the mirror.
Am I at your high school reunion right now? The coulda, shoulda, wouldas?
No. Like I
could have been a contender coach.
No, like who cares if you could have played JUCO ball? I wanted to go to CU, man. Like I wanted to be a buff. But
why don't they have a baseball team, Jake?
You know what's funny? Tuesday when I was teaching my class, my students were trying to think of evergreen topics now that the basketball season has ended. They're like, why don't we have a baseball team?
That's a great question.
And I go, I've been focused on this issue for 10 years. If you
it.
want to have an in-depth discussion, I will give you every reason why CU doesn't have a baseball program. And we can have this show. I think it's a fascinating topic, particularly because if you put a baseball program in Boulder, they would be competitive right away because of the names we're talking about and the amount of people that would want to come play.
Yes.
It's the only school in the Pac-12 without a baseball program. But you're talking about financial issues. University of Colorado's already had a scholarship imbalance where they need to add a women's team. But
Washington State.
Yes.
Okay. Oregon State, of course, is a big-time program, but not always. And Corvallis is nothing compared to Boulder. Utah is in the Pac. I call it Pac 11 for baseball. Listen, not all these programs are Arizona and Arizona State, UCLA and USC. Now, granted, Stanford, Cal, these are other good schools, but if Utah has one, Come on, Jake. If UNC has a D1 program and Air Force can figure it out, and you have such great D2 schools in Colorado like Mesa and Metro and Mines, you got to be kidding me. It's pathetic at this point.
Do you know how many D1 programs the University of Colorado offers?
Wow. Well, I know it's more kind of like what they don't. I'll say 12.
It's 15, 9 women's. In 6 men's, and
that's it, huh?
Yeah,
that's
like
pathetic,
I said, it's really bad. And one of the things Rick George said when he took over as athletic director, he was the former team president or co-president of the Rangers or something like that. He said he wanted to add baseball, he wanted to add sports. That's one of the things I've crushed him on over the years. Right now, it's not a great position to crush Rick George given the Deion Sanders stuff, but I think there have been some failures in that athletic department, and chief among them is the fact that the University of Colorado still doesn't offer baseball, and more logically, doesn't offer gymnastics.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Because every school in the Pac-12 has gymnastics, and
I just assumed that it's like there's like how many women are on a gymnastics, men and women are on a gymnastics team? We're talking about 15 total?
Yeah.
Something like that?
And aside from that, you already have the facilities built because all you need to put down is a mat over your basketball court.
Listen, we don't want to.
Yeah.
This is a pet peeve of mine too. I've been lucky enough to watch a lot of Pac-12 baseball, and I've been deeply involved with this stuff in baseball, Colorado baseball for a long time. It's an embarrassment. Frankly, it's an embarrassment for CSU too. They could do better. They should have a team. Nevada has a team. There's Mountain West baseball. UNLV has a team. I mean, there's ways to do it. And there's South Dakota State has a team, Jake. North Dakota, the Bison have a really good team. I mean, the Summit League is a real thing. There's a school like St. Thomas in like upper Minnesota or something.
Good school.
Somehow has a team.
Yeah.
I mean, there's ways to do it in cold climates. So I don't want to hear that. It's not a good excuse.
And it is just bizarre that University of Northern Colorado is the only D1 program.
Well, Air Force too.
Well, I always forget Air Force.
But that's a tricky one. That is because it's a different type of kid.
And it's a different type of school too.
It is. And listen, I know they do have a D1 program.
And one of my friends' little brothers actually plays for that team. He's a great young pitcher. Might get drafted. His name's Jimmy.
Good for him.
Strider. So watch out for that.
But all those kids that really go to Air Force, yes, they're good baseball players. They wouldn't be there playing if they weren't.
No doubt.
And
it's
they win
just
games.
more federal.
There's clearly other reasons why you would be playing baseball at Air Force. Clearly, you're a different cut above most. That's for sure.
So I went back and watched Coffee Break yesterday, which was great. It was our opening day coverage. We had a lot of fun. We got commended on it. Do you know how many current Rockies we named on the show?
Oh my gosh, probably 5.
2. We mentioned Freeland and Blackman. And
we didn't mention Chris Bryant.
We didn't mention Chris Bryant.
We didn't talk about Tovar.
No.
Didn't get Ryan McMahon in there.
No,
Marquez. No.
And it's funny because obviously on this show we'll go a little bit more in depth. And but you talked about going around the ballpark yesterday and going around Lodo. It was Tulowitzki, it was Walker, it was Helton, it was Cargo, it was Arenado jerseys. Yeah. There just isn't a lot of name recognition and star power on this team currently. Yeah. And eventually maybe it will come with Tovar, and if Bryant plays a full season, it will come. My favorite Rocky, at least for the last couple of years, has been Ryan McMahon. Okay. And Ryan was a microcosm to me of the bigger problem with the Rockies yesterday. And I was just waiting for the bullpen to blow that game. I was waiting for the bullpen to blow that game, and everyone was going to be like, oh, the bullpen. You know what? The Rockies scored 1 run, and it wouldn't have happened without the sun. And it was because of Ryan McMahon. And again, further, their approach at the plate was awful.
A lot of strikeouts yesterday.
DMac.
A lot of aggressive, non-contact positive swings.
Josiah Gray led Major League Baseball in home runs allowed and walks conceded last year. Mm-hmm. The Rockies saw 21 pitches in the first inning. 4 were in the strike zone, and they didn't score a run.
Wow.
They were swinging all over the place. I didn't have the time to actually count this, but I can tell you against Gray, I think he faced, about 3 times through the order, so 27.
Yeah.
So he had...
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I want to say that of like the 24 guys he faced, 16 or 17 of them were first pitch swinging.
Well, he faced 27 guys and had 14 first pitch strikes. So he was ahead on more than half the batters that he faced. He only walked 1 batter, and as I'm looking at the numbers, he had 6 strikeouts. So a guy that, and you're ahead of me on this stat, but that's not showing an awful lot of patience. Then again, what is your approach? Ryan McMahon struck out 3 times, I think, too. So not great
His
for him.
first at bat, he at least got to a deeper count, but it was one of the worst at bats I had seen. And then he followed it up with like a 3-pitch, just god awful at bat of him just swinging all over the place. But there is a positive to that as well, and I think it's a guy like Tovar where you don't tell him anything. He goes out there, he sees his teammates first pitch swinging, he's first pitch swinging, but after the game you maybe go, that guy led Major League Baseball in walks last year, maybe change your approach. And this is why this season I think is interesting, because it is about playing the kids. It is about having the kids make mistakes in low pressure situations. Obviously yesterday, sold out crowd, a little bit different of a situation, but throughout the course of the season, you're going to have times where Tovar and Montero and then eventually Veen make mistakes. And it's going to be okay, because these games don't actually matter for the Rockies right now.
Right.
It's going to be about Bud Black having that long leash and giving them the chance to make those mistakes. And what I've really liked so far is Moustakas has only gotten 1 start that I remember. I thought he was going to come in here and take all the playing time away from Montero. He hasn't so far. So the Rockies are really actually buying into this development thing, even down to Bud Black, who historically, like most managers, is going to tend to play veterans.
Do you think McMahon will just stay at second base, or they'll move some folks around?
This is an interesting question, because when Rogers comes back, who's won a Gold Glove at second base.
When's he expected to come back?
Maybe at the end of the season. He might be lost for the year. But
yeah, that's what I thought. Yeah.
But you're going to get, Rogers is part of the future. McMahon's part of the future. He signed an extension. Tovar, Montero. Yeah. So we've got 4 infielders. I think the obvious answer is you're going to put Ryan McMahon at first base.
First base. What are we doing with Toglia?
Toglia is going to be an outfielder.
What are we doing with Crone?
Crone's going to be gone.
Crone's going to be gone.
I mean, this isn't this year. This is in the future.
Okay, so we're getting rid of our one All-Star who just got National League Player of the Week.
The great part of
fantastic, Jake. That seems on par.
The great part of Major League Baseball is you will always have one All-Star.
All right, so Crone is really. You think they're just going to get rid of him, huh?
I think they just have not made those trades at the deadline where they sell a guy. I think Crone would be the candidate. I think he's up on contract at the end of the year, but it would just make all too much sense for them to eventually move on from Crone. He's in his 30s. By the time the Rockies are contending for playoffs again, which let's just say rough timeline, it's not going to be this year, probably not next year. So 2 years from now, 3 years from now, Crone's likely not that guy anymore.
So totally has the athleticism to play in the outfield?
Yeah, I think he's playing outfield in the minors right now.
Is that right? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I just know him from, big first baseman out of UCLA. And the time that he has spent with the Rockies. Strikes out way too much, obviously. He's got to get that together. And Ryan McMahon is just a really, really solid major league baseball player who can play literally any position on the field.
And that's what I like about him. He's got some nice pop. He plays any position. He's really athletic.
Yeah.
He's a good dude. He's a guy that can be on any Major League Baseball team. If you're talking about a World Series contender, he's probably the 10th guy who starts most days but actually isn't a starter if you're running out your best line. But he's legit.
He's definitely legit.
And he's great against right-handed pitching.
Chris Bryant is obviously more than legit. He's got to be the guy.
His at-bats yesterday were good.
Okay.
He looked locked in. He was seeing the ball well. You could tell on the RBI single he had that drove in Tovar.
Very balanced, very solid, great approach.
That entire at-bat, I'm like, he's hitting one left center. Like, you knew it. Like, you could see it. And he poked that one out. That was out of the zone for the double down the line, too. I just feel good about where Chris Bryant is right now. He still hasn't hit a home run at Coors Field, which is quite amazing. But I feel like
that'll change.
That's going to start to turn into, if that continues, more of this is a weird baseball statistic than it is an indictment of Chris Bryant being bad, because his power numbers actually have been good on the road when he's been healthy.
Yeah, I guess I'm not really. Listen, when it comes to the Rockies this year, Jake, I think we want to see more positives than negatives, and you want to see good development. I just don't know how they succeed without really hitting on drafting, developing pitchers. And I just don't think any pitchers with free agent possibilities any other place are going to come here. So you got to get unbelievably lucky, sort of like they got lucky with Bard. I mean, let's face it, that was kind of absurdly lucky. And even now, we'll see where it goes. But to me, it's all about the starting core pitching. And you know what? Okay, Freeland's homegrown. Marquez is homegrown. Okay, I mean, how many more of those guys that do we have here? Because when you really look at it, are the Rockies going to lose games because of bad fielding and bad hitting? It doesn't seem to be the case.
Yeah, and I was going to bring that up in a second, but one of the things that made that 17-18 run so good was the pitching. It was the best pitching the Rockies have ever had.
Yeah.
And it was Marquez, who was kind of homegrown, but they got unbelievably lucky on in a trade, and it worked out well. Freeland, who was entirely homegrown. Gray, who was entirely homegrown. Yeah. Chatwood, who was a reclamation project, kind of homegrown. Anderson, homegrown. And you look at the Rockies pipeline right now, and there aren't pitchers coming. That's what scares me.
Is that right?
And that's why I think this Tovar Montero Veen situation could get very Cargo Tulo-y, where it's like, we've got a couple guys, but there's no pitching. And I'll have you name all of the Rockies' homegrown, really good relievers they've had over the last 10 years.
Oh,
go ahead.
Relievers?
Yeah, go ahead. There's two that I can think of.
Relievers. So you're talking relief in any sort of spot.
That really were bullpen guys. So like Freeland worked out of the bullpen a little bit.
Relievers? I'm struggling.
Scott Oberg and Carlos Estevez. Those were the only major league level.
Where is Estevez now?
I forgot, but he signed elsewhere. I think he's with maybe the Giants.
I mean, you want to talk about a guy that I just never understood. Big bull of a man, throws 100 miles an hour.
Angels.
And Oberg, Oberg had health issues. I don't know if that's...
He's done.
Where was Ottavino?
Ottavino,
but he
was a reclamation project. He was a starter with the Cardinals, came over here.
Okay.
And they turned him into something. So he kind of is, but not really. So that was one where they got lucky like Bard.
Yeah.
So my point being is, if the Rockies are to replicate what they did in 17-18 and make postseason runs in the future, it's going to come down to pitching. And it's going to come down to developing your own relievers. They tried to spend the most amount of money possible on relievers back then. That did not work. They got to get lucky and develop them. I think those are the only hopes for your bullpen. But finding guys like Kyle Freeland, and I think the Colorado thing does help, where he's just got this tremendous fortitude of, it doesn't matter if I allow one or two, we're likely going to score a bunch because we're in Colorado. Herman Marquez has found a way to pitch around, using fastballs and sliders and not using his curve as much here. So I think it's going to take a really smart pitcher. I actually loved the way John Gray pitched in Denver, and then on the road, it would be a completely different pitcher, basically, and it was good both versions. So it's going to be about that. And you mentioned fielding and defense. I didn't think that the defense was particularly amazing the last time the Rockies were good. Obviously, Nolan was great, going back to DJ at second base. Their infield was good. The last time the Rockies had a rangy, athletic outfielder was, I don't know. Like, they haven't had a really good outfield defender in a while. And that's what made Jerks and Profar such a nice pickup for them, because I just wanted to see how that played out at Coors Field, which is the largest outfield in Major League Baseball. And you look yesterday, and he made 3 awesome plays.
Awesome. Love it. Well, okay, fine. That has been a weird deal over the years. It's weird with Coors Field. It's not sometimes the extra base hits or even the home runs. What kills you sometimes are just those the singles that would just be outs in other ballparks that just keep rallies going, or what should be a single, and because it's just so deep, it's a double. It's nowhere close to touching the fence, but it's a double anyways. That would only be a single. So singles that would be outs, and doubles that would be singles. And then it's just, it just drives you bananas when there's stuff like that. And that doesn't have anything to do with the home runs. I don't know how you stop it. It's one of the quirks of the ballpark. It's just, what are you going to do? I do think it is fascinating. And I think James Marilat brought it up. And I'm open to it, because I'm open with anything. With the rule changes and the stopping of the shift and the lengthening of the bases, the uptick in stolen bases, and the fact you can't throw over as much as you did, should the Colorado Rockies go to a more quick speed sort of lineup and get away from the the Blake Street Bash Bombers, that sort of thing.
They've needed to for 31 years, and the only times they've been successful is when they've built teams to be successful on the road. Teams that are good at the fielding, teams that are good at base running, teams that are good at pitching, because eventually the power is going to come. One thing that's in common with every single time the Rockies have been to the playoffs is they've had a great road record, and their home record was just okay. The Rockies' best home seasons have not actually amounted to much in terms of their overall record. And just to make out your point on singles and things falling between, Jonathan Daza starts 326 feet away from the plate, which is 6 feet shy of the furthest back center fielder in Major League Baseball. He's in the top 20. So, like, the way the Rockies position their fielders, and rightfully so, is they have to be that far deep, which makes me think...
Because they're protecting the gaps the best they can.
Right, which makes me think I would want a guy like a Billy Hamilton in his prime here, where he is able to cover so much ground in center field, and then he gets on base and he wreaks havoc on the bases. And guess what? That puts all the pressure on the pitchers, where all of a sudden they're going to leave one over the plate, and boom, it's a double in the gap for Chris Bryant. So I've long thought the best way to build a baseball team that's going to be successful in Denver is to have great fielding, great base running, and pitchers that are just lights out. And obviously pitchers that are going to be slider dependent, and slider as their strikeout pitch instead of a curveball, or maybe even a changeup as their strikeout pitch, like Kyle Freeland has developed over time. So that's the goal. But when you look at what the Rockies have right now for their future core, Tovar's looks like he could be a good defender. He's very athletic.
Speed?
Not fast.
Okay, interesting.
Montero is not a good defender.
So Montero's not a good defender. He's playing third base.
Not a good defender.
Okay, that's a problem.
Yes. So you could actually, now that I said it, you could get in a situation where Montero goes to first and McMahon goes to third. Could end up in that situation.
And McMahon's speed's okay.
It's fine.
so he's, well, I mean, Nolan was never fast either. So, that wasn't his deal. He's just a plus.
Yeah, but you know who was? Trevor Story was one of the fastest guys in Major League Baseball.
Trevor Story was fast. Brendan Rodgers' speed is solid.
It's decent. He's plus speed.
You got to have that guy in center field and maybe right field. Those two spots. Second base is tricky because I guess that's Brendan Rodgers' spot for a long time. Yeah. And his speed's okay. So they're really not set up the right way to take advantage of these situations. And it's the National League with the DH now, bro. So you're not gonna. Who was the DH last night? Charlie. There you go, Chuck. Chuck was the DH.
He's the DH every night, basically.
You think that's where he's gonna be?
Yeah.
At Coors Field for the most part.
Did you notice, by the way, yesterday? Gonna lose your love. Pitch clock. All right, we gotta keep going.
Really? Yeah, I did not notice that.
Yeah, the fans had to sing the song because the pitch clock is moving so quick that they didn't have enough time to get the walk up in.
I did not know that. That's hysterical. Well, oh well.
So the Jumbotron guys were like trying to figure out where to start the song in the middle. Like you could tell the third at bat, it got a little later in the song so the fans could cheer.
Oh, that's funny. I did not know. Listen, I love Charlie Blackmon, but I love Charlie Blackmon. It's Charlie Blackmon. He's here. It's Charlie Blackmon. But the problem I have with Todd Helton at the end of the day is how many other teams would this guy start for? Not just play for, start for. Not come off the bench and, like a Giambi sort of situation. How many teams would Charlie Blackmon start for? And the answer with Todd Helton, sadly, at the end of his career was nobody else. And you just cannot have guys on your team when the answer is nobody. So let me put it to you. How many teams at his age, his abilities right now, and I'm glad to see Chuck have a pretty good beginning of the season, but how many other teams do you think Charlie Blackmon would really start for right now?
4 or 5.
Okay, so at least that's something.
Yeah.
I mean, at least it's something.
And the thing is, too, even a team like the Astros against right-handed pitching would start Charlie Blackmon as a platoon DH because historically, as a left-handed hitter, he has crushed right-handed pitching. And he's actually not got the most severe splits over his career. They've started to get a little bit more severe later in his career. So I think Charlie would be a useful piece for most teams still. But we're talking about a guy who can no longer really play the outfield, whose power's going, who had really good speed early on in his career before he was hurt, but it really wasn't a factor even in his prime. So a lot of the things that made Chuck are gone, and it's just, here's a guy wearing a beard and the fans love him.
And this is where it gets frustrating because as much as we all love Charlie, we do. right? I mean, we can start having conversations about retiring his number and all that. And it'd be interesting to break down Hall of Fame chit chat. It's probably not quite enough for Chuck, but
Definitely not.
It would be an interesting sort of conversation. Anyways, how much reps do you give to a guy that's a fan favorite and people come to see? There's no doubt about it, compared to getting reps for guys who need to develop. And that's the conundrum, of course, with the Rockies, period. It's about winning and about doing stuff for the fans. And there's no doubt playing Charlie Blackmon does something for the fans. No doubt about it. But how much does he really do for your future when there really is no future with Charlie Blackmon anymore?
Yeah, and that's the question. But the question to ask as a follow-up is, who are you playing instead of Charlie Blackmon? And
Toglia, somebody like that. I mean, where's Zach Veen going to play eventually? What are you going to do with Montero, if you want to get him reps and he's not playing in the field?
And these questions might come later this season, but for me, the answer with Toglia is he's playing instead of Jonathan Daza.
Okay.
That one's easy.
All right.
And,
it may come to shove when Veen comes up, and
that's when things get interesting.
Yeah. And I know what they're doing with the financial, all that, what Chris Bryant went through years and years ago, because I have no doubt Zach Veen could be with the Rockies right now.
And it's smart because the Rockies didn't do that with Trevor Story, and look what happened. They lost him a year earlier than they would have. And they could have used him that year because they ended up having to sign Jose Iglesias, who was not very useful.
How old is Veen right now? What is he at? Who's older, Tovar or Veen? It's got to be it's got to be somewhat close.
Zach Veen is a couple days older. So
look at that.
It's really close.
How crazy is that? Huh?
Just because I'm looking at it too, I did want to mention Nolan Jones has been awesome so far.
Don't know about him. Talk to me about Nolan Jones.
So they traded one of their higher prospects for Nolan Jones this offseason. Nolan Jones, kind of a prospect himself, had only played, a cup of coffee in the majors last year for the Guardians. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And speaking of that, I'm going to be the last person doing that because I'm like the youngest person calling baseball. So people are going to be like, when I'm 70, like, that Jake Shapiro stuck in his old ways, calling it the disabled list and them the Indians. I'm like, no, I'm sorry. That's how I grew up. But yes. So Nolan Jones comes over in a trade. Gets sent down, was like one of the last cuts from the big league opening day roster.
Okay.
Didn't do all that well in spring, but he has been mashing so far in Albuquerque. He has a couple home runs.
Good, great.
And he's going to be a factor. He's actually plays third base a little bit. Another Nolan who plays third base. Looks like he could be a good player. I know from some reporting that I did yesterday, the reason he's down in the minor leagues right now is he's got to work on some mechanical issues.
Okay.
And they don't want him to work on those in the big league level and lose confidence at the same time. That just it's hard to work on mechanics while you're in the big league level. And while you have the ability, you might as well throw him down to the minors. Veen so far, by the way, he's been playing for Hartford to start the season. He has only played in one game. Hartford had their season opener the other night. So we're not sure on Veen, but you would expect Veen to quickly get the call up to AAA and then at some point this summer to crack the big league roster. Right now, he's the 34th best prospect in baseball, according to Baseball Prospectus.
Okay. Good stuff.
Yeah. So, and he's going to play right and left. So you're, again, with Toglia, that's when it becomes interesting with Chuck, because then you can move maybe Chris Bryant to DH a little bit.
Right.
You put Veen in right, or you put Veen in left or right, Toglia the opposite, and then you move Profar over to center because he's got a great glove.
That sounds good.
And then you start developing, and by the way, that's a big league outfield. Toglia, Veen, and Profar. And your infield, if Rogers was healthy, of Tovar, Rogers, McMahon, Montero, is a major league infield.
Yeah, and Diaz as a catcher is
all right.
Sure,
he's okay.
Yeah, you're okay there.
Yeah,
and this is why hope springs eternal for the Rockies, and you start getting excited about because they really do have high-level quality players. They do. So if you wanted to give Bill Schmidt and the Rockies a little bit of credit, there you go. But then again, you scare the crap out of me when you say there's no pitching. And when you say there's no pitching and there's no pitching in the minors and the depth is whatever. So you just said Zach Veen is the 34th best prospect. Okay, that's great, actually. what pitching prospect is the highest ranked pitching prospect for the Colorado Rockies? Boy, if you really have that, I'll be
Let me look.
I'll be slightly impressed.
Yeah,
if you can, you know, Google finger that one.
Rockies' top pitching prospect is their 6th highest prospect. It's Gabriel Hughes,
Okay.
who right now is in high A, and his estimated time of arrival in the majors is 2025. He's 21 years old. He was taken in the first round last summer. So, like, that's the other thing, DMac, is it's their pitchers. Their next top pitching prospect is their 9th best prospect. He's also in high A, not expected till 2025. So they've got some good big leaguers or good minor leaguers and good prospects towards the high end of their minors, but they're all hitters. All their pitching prospects are in the low minors. Their next pitching prospect is an A-ball.
Yeah,
He's
and
19 years
here's
old.
what happens.
Their next one is 19-year-old in A-ball.
And here's what happens, everybody. They trade these guys. These are the guys that they get rid of for who knows what. You know, for a veteran reliever, something like that. And these are the guys you seriously can't afford to let go of.
Yeah.
So hopefully they don't trade him. But that's a problem. You know, that's a big problem. That's a major gap. And so the guys that you have, let's go. I like Lawrence too, man. I know he's all over the place.
Awesome.
He does throw 100 miles an hour from a quirky arm angle. So it is a different look. You know, on the surface, you'd say this guy should be fantastic.
And he's got a wipeout pitch. I think Justin Lawrence is going to be the future closer of the Rockies. Like, they've got some pieces in their bullpen that I think moving forward are going to be factors, but there's a reason why Jose Urena is going to pitch tonight, and there's a reason why he's in the rotation. It's because the Rockies don't have anyone else, and they're hoping for the best. There's a reason why Denison Lamet is a reclamation project here. It's because they don't really have anybody else. It's going to be a while. Like, Kyle Freeland and Herman Marquez are going to be part of this rotation if Herman Marquez is re-upped after the year for a while, because the Rockies simply don't have better options. So that's like long-term outlook look at the Rockies. Short-term outlook look at the Rockies is they've got Washington this weekend, obviously. They've got St. Louis next week, which will be interesting, obviously, because they're one of the better teams in baseball. Nolan, Paul Goldschmidt, all yada, yada. And then the next time I talk to you is going to be right before the Rockies face the Seattle Mariners over the weekend, next weekend, which will be fun because it'll be Julio Rodriguez and the Seattle Mariners, and that was one of the best stories of last season. By the way, the Seattle Mariners playoff drought ending has hurt the Denver Broncos because now the Broncos look more inept. You know, it's the fan. We got to talk a little Broncos, even on the baseball podcast. He's DMac. I'm Jake Shapiro. Thanks so much for joining Mile High Baseball Podcast, Episode 3. Rockies right now are 3-4, likely to be above 500 by the next time we talk, unless the St. Louis Cardinals just open a can of you-know-what on them. So thanks for tuning in, and we will talk to you very soon.